So we are back in the studio in London, in Soho, and I'm here recording season 16. I can't actually believe we're on season 16. It's mad. But Food for Thought is here, and we've got a whole incredible lineup of guests talking everything from gut health to our skin to the environment, from male anorexia. We've got some huge topics in this series. Don't miss out. This week's guest is someone that I have shared an incredible journey with. Dr. Zoe Williams. She's not only my friend, but she's a GP, an author, fellow podcaster. You probably all have seen her on This Morning. She's their resident doctor. And it was actually one of the first episodes that we ever did together on Food for Thought many series ago on fertility that inspired me, made me go ahead on my motherhood journey. So we have a fantastic episode for you. We discuss endometriosis, women's healthcare. We discuss the latest stats, the latest that we have on the fact that women are not small men. We deserve our own health system that can support us in that way. We cover postpartum health just as much as everything across board from growing up and puberty. Please sit down, take notes and enjoy. Hello, Zoe.
Hi, Rhiannon. How are you?
Oh my goodness. Do you know that question? I should actually think about that question more, because how are you?
Yeah.
Is one of those, I know you've spoken about it before, but one of those questions where you just go, yeah, great, thank you. How are you?
And you know, with now I've got the little one,
yeah,
you almost teach them that. I'm realising how you teach, you're taught so young.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm teaching him to be polite to people, say hello and ask, how are you? And then when somebody says, how are you? You say, I'm good, thank you. Yeah. And then I thought, but if you're not good, you don't have to say that. You can say, if you're sad, you can say you're sad.
I know.
But hopefully, usually you're good. And you're taught from, as soon as you can speak, you're taught to say you're good.
I know. So very in-depth, loaded start, which actually I do on every episode. But I guess it brings me back to why we're here today anyway, because you've come on the podcast before. And actually your episode, which I've mentioned in loads of published stuff I've done now. But Zoe, for everybody, was the person that told me, just go for it and have a baby, basically. So I was 8 weeks pregnant at my wedding, but relieved I did, because we did a fertility episode.
Yeah.
Last time, and today we're talking, I guess, about a bit more about your childhood, which I think will be interesting if you don't mind going there.
No,
obviously, you Grow Girl, your book, your new published book, which is so exciting, which does talk about how we should address things that were unspoken of before.
Yeah.
And as you've got Lisbon now, and you're a mum, and the world must be a different place to you right now.
Oh gosh, definitely. I think becoming a parent is, for me, it's the biggest shift in my life there's ever been. You know, it's a bigger shift than I moved abroad at one point. It's a bigger shift than going to university. It is the biggest shift ever. And it's changed me. I'm a different person. And I think I've sort of been on this journey of, there's been a bit of a bereavement of the old me that's gone. And I know one of the things you were going to ask me about is the whole sort of bouncing back after you have a baby. Yeah. And let's just put it straight, bouncing back is bullshit. Because I think when people use that term, they're talking about the physical body.
They're talking about weight loss, right?
Yeah, they're talking about you looking the way you did before you had a baby.
Which doesn't dictate how physically healthy you are, even if you do look a certain way or not.
Absolutely not. But what it doesn't refer, you know, even more importantly, emotionally, socially, your relationships, like everything changes. And I think I wasn't really prepared for that. I thought I was prepared and ready to have a baby. I'd wanted to have a baby for a long time, but actually in hindsight, I think it was a bit of a shock to the system.
It definitely is, first of all, absolutely. But I think from the line of work, this is why I've always found you, obviously as a friend, so fascinating anyway, but I think what you've done in your lifetime put certain emphases on certain areas. You're a doctor, so health is obviously an area. You were in Gladiators. Physical fitness is a big part, or was such a big part of your life, still is, but it can't be the same once you have had a child, right?
None of it's the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially the physical fitness.
Yeah.
That's definitely not the same as it was. But yeah, I think you view everything through a different lens. I think you feel more vulnerable as well. Just generally in life, I think throughout my life, I've always been very, very independent. I guess I've been very resilient because there've been times in my life that haven't been easy, but it's been fine. Then all of a sudden, I've always felt like it's fine. I'll be okay. No matter what happens to me, I'll be okay. Then all of a sudden there's this little person. I'm like, if something happens to him, I'm not going to be okay. And it's this new vulnerability generally in life that, yeah, I don't know if there's something about being older when you have your first child as well, whether I see these young women with 3 or 4 kids, and I'm like, how are they doing it? But that I think the big adaptation possibly is more difficult if you're older and your life is more established and you've got ingrained habits and you've had this freedom, financial freedom, flexibility socially, and then all of a sudden everything's dictated by this little person.
No, I think it's totally fair to say that, and I think it's really important because people need to hear these conversations. We're not saying it's the same for everybody, but it's really important to highlight that it is a different transition. And I guess writing a book, where on earth did you get the idea then to do a book for teenagers essentially, or young girls growing up into that puberty type zone? Was it inspired after having Lisbon? Is it something you've always wanted to do?
Neither of those really. I think probably all of the various different things that I do, it's probably the same with you. In some way they're inspired by my own life. So, the reason I'm such a huge advocate of physical activity is because for me, being active throughout my life is the thing that has given me confidence. It's made me competitive and therefore been able to achieve academic success, and some of my best friends have come from sports. So
mentally resilient, I think it must be.
Definitely. And I think, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about advocating that is I want everybody else to have those benefits that I've had. So when it came to writing the book, I think my life experience that I've had, if I could go back and live my life again and it'd be better, if I had my book as a guide, as a handbook, I genuinely think I would have lived a better life.
Me too. Absolutely. There was nothing.
I think, it's the book I wish I'd had when I was growing up, but it's written for girls who are growing up in today's world because they have a lot of challenges that we didn't have. Social media, and one of the other big challenges for parents in a way is they have access to information. So, if we wanted to know something about sex, we would wait for that Cosmopolitan magazine to come out every 2 weeks for Position of the Fortnight. But young people today,
do you
remember?
Yeah, do you remember?
Even years before you were interested in having sex, that was the most exciting thing that would happen. You'd scroll the pages. What's the Position of the Fortnight? Whoa! But nowadays kids can access information online, anything that they want, and a lot of those resources may not be credible, reputable. As we know in our line of work, young people, often the first place they go for advice about mental health is TikTok.
Media, Yeah, and you also touched on, selfishly for me, actually hearing what you just said gave me a bit of reassurance, because we are, and I'm finding it quite difficult navigating my own journey as a parent, that we are bombarded with so much information that you end up second guessing yourself every day. Am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? Obviously, then people tell you there is no right or wrong, but there's an abundance
it's right, it's wrong. There is no right or wrong. Well, then I'm even more confused. Does somebody tell me what's right?
Exactly. Who actually knows? Which leads me on, I guess, to let's talk about women's health as well. Because in general, we're talking about inspiring the future generations to understand their body. We need to talk about the fact that 1 in 10 women are affected by endometriosis. Yeah. That's the same statistic as asthma. So why on earth has it taken so long, first of all, for us to have these discussions, to have our eyes opened? And what can we do?
Well, I think we're in a moment where women's health is starting to get the recognition it deserves, because for so long, conditions that only affect women have been pretty much ignored by the healthcare system. I always say that not just the NHS, but all healthcare systems were built by white men for white men. So, the number of women who've just been told it's just part of being a woman when they actually have a condition like endometriosis. Yeah,
you didn't realise that you didn't have the information because you were just conditioned not to ask for it.
Yeah. So it's changing, there's a shift, and we definitely see that with the way that menopause is being discussed, but also with many other conditions that affect women. But I was shocked to discover that endometriosis is as common in women as asthma is. So 1 in 10 women have it. That shocked me. I discovered that when I was doing some research for my podcast. And I was about, to speak to somebody who had endometriosis, and I couldn't believe it, and I'm happy to say I didn't know that.
Yeah.
1 in 10.
And you're a GP, and you think GPs should know but it hasn't been highlighted as priority.
No, and if I think about how many patients I see about their asthma compared to how many women I see about their endometriosis, there's definitely a disbalance there. So yes, endometriosis is this really common condition that can be very, very disabling, can have a whole host of symptoms, can make life miserable, and can affect fertility as well. And it takes on average over 7 years for it to be diagnosed. One of the reasons is that to get a definitive diagnosis, not always, but often you actually have to have an operation where they have to, put the little cameras inside and have a look to diagnose it. So, it's not something that can be diagnosed very simply.
What are those key signs that people look out for that they need to know?
Well, the commonest symptoms are painful periods.
Yeah.
That's the commonest symptom, and that's when a lot of women who have endometriosis will go all the way back to being a teenager and say, look, I always had these very, very painful periods. But what endometriosis is, the lining of the womb is called the endometrium, and the cells of the endometrium are called endometrial cells.
Yeah.
So when you get cells that are very similar to those cells in other parts of the body other than the lining of the womb, that's endometriosis. So the issue of having those cells outside of the womb is in the womb, obviously, those cells respond to hormones, the lining of the womb gets thicker, and then you bleed and the blood leaves the body. But if those cells are sort of outside of the womb, and, the commonest places are in the pelvis, but we also hear about endometriosis of the lung. I've never seen a case, but, we hear about it. That blood can't escape in the same way. So it causes inflammation, pain, and can cause scarring as well. So, people who've been living with the condition for years may have a lot of scarring. So even if the endometriosis goes away, which it tends to go away after menopause, that scarring in itself can then cause lots of symptoms. So it can be a very, very disabling condition once a month, but for many people it's throughout the month. They have pain and other symptoms, affects your bladder function, bowel function, you name it. And there's so many people I know now who are telling me, oh, I have endometriosis, but had never told me before. Again, it's one of those, even if people have a diagnosis, women's health still has so much stigma attached to it.
Well, it's taboo to even mention you're on your period. For me at school, we used to have nicknames for period because we didn't want anyone to know we were on our period.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It was like a hidden thing.
Yeah. It was interesting. I was at an event at the end of the summer, and it was a women's golf open. And we did a panel event about.
Was that the one you were hosting? I saw you were hosting.
Yes.
Oh, amazing!
Yes.
I saw that. I was like, "Go, Zoe!"
So it was women's golf, but it was still predominantly men that were there on the day.
Yeah.
So we did this panel about women's health in sport, and we basically talked about periods for about half an hour, and all these men were sat there
having to listen, which I love.
Well, and it's funny we say having to listen.
Yes.
They were attentive. There were maybe one or two that looked a bit edgy and probably wanted to leave but didn't dare.
Yes.
But most of them looked fascinated.
Good.
And I think it makes me think, we often think that men don't care, they're not interested because it's women's problems. But actually, sometimes I think we need to give them permission to be involved. And hopefully they want to be involved. They should be involved because women's health affects every single person because we all have women in our life. It will
affect their friends, their partners, their mothers, their children.
Their daughters. There was one guy there who was a dad with his daughter. And he was just like listening so attentively. And then he came, they came in, I was doing a book signing. He bought the book and we signed the book. And I said to him, did you find that interesting? He said, dads need to know this stuff.
Yeah, they
because
do.
I want her to be able to come to me to talk about this, not just her mum. So.
But that's exactly how things have to change. And that's fantastic that you're doing all of that anyway to bring about awareness, because if you want to share, if you don't mind sharing, your childhood struggles of confidence and adolescence, you said it's the book you wish you'd had.
Yeah.
Why? Where did that stem from?
Well, I think if I go back to when I was little, I I was extremely shy, clingy. I used to just cling on to my mum if we were out in public. I grew up in a small town called, well, people know of Burnley, but actually Nelson, which is next to Burnley. And it was a predominantly white community. There's this, a significant proportion of the population were Asian. But I think we were only 2 black families in the whole town.
Only 2.
So I looked different, especially with my hair and
the challenges.
And I think it was positive, mostly positive attention.
Yeah.
But people wanted to look at me and people wanted to touch my hair, and so
touch your hair. They got you to touch your hair.
Yeah. The hair touching thing is real. Can I touch your hair? So I think I was always very, very, very shy. Didn't have much confidence. Again, it was physical activity that really helped me with that, but also very aware that I was different. And I think as a teenager, I was popular at school. I had lots of friends. I had a good social life outside of school. But when you got to that age of whether or not you're physically attractive to the other sex, I always felt that I wasn't, because I was different. Or even if I was, then me being different, people didn't want to be associated with me in that way. And
I mean, it's a nerve-wracking time anyway for everyone,
isn't it?
Let alone you're one of 2 black families in a village that's completely white.
Yeah.
And you must have just felt completely, it must just be so, I can't because I haven't lived that experience.
Yeah.
It's so important. Yeah, you sharing that.
So I think so I was different, and that affected my confidence, but I couldn't really change any of that. But what I could change was the way I viewed myself and spoke to myself. So I think a lot of people have asked since I wrote the book, if you could go back and say one thing to yourself, what would it be? And it would be just to treat yourself with as much love and respect as you do other people. Because I think especially girls and women, we still do it as grown-up women who know we shouldn't. We look in the mirror and we're like, oh, look at that line on my face. Look at that spot. Oh, look at that. Oh, I'm minging today. Oh, I look gross today. I was thinking it on the way here. I'm a bit tired, didn't sleep well. I'm like, oh, God, you look minging. I'm like, no, I wouldn't say, if you looked a bit tired, I wouldn't say that to you.
No, would I? No.
I wouldn't think it. I wouldn't say it.
No.
Yet
I actually thought,
do that
she's
to ourselves.
so on trend wearing a denim skirt in studio, because I saw it on This Morning the other week, and I was like, Lisa was talking about denim skirts. Like, check her out.
And I think we have to be so careful in front of our children as well, because I remember somebody once saying this, our children look like us because they share 50% of our genetics, right? And if we're in front of the mirror going, oh, God, gotta look awful, gotta look this, you're telling them that that's how they look, and they're going to grow up believing that as well. So, if we can't do it for ourselves, we have to do it for them.
I mean, we've got the tools
talk to ourselves
now.
Positively.
All of this information, don't talk about your weight, your shape, your size, all these things in front of children is really just so important. But
I think with the book, if you can teach, the book's written for girls aged 9+, if you can support girls to develop these habits early on, before they enter puberty or as they're entering puberty, and give them the tools. So there's loads of little, they're children, so there's little activities that they can do, little exercises.
I've seen, I have
a guide to how to do affirmations.
Yeah.
And if they can develop that as a skill.
Because they're starting their periods earlier and earlier, aren't they?
They are, yeah.
Isn't the average 9 now? I could have got that completely wrong. It used to be a lot later when I was younger.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Is the average 9? I'm not sure it's quite that young.
I saw something on TV. I probably got that stat. Don't quote me on that stat,
guys. Well, it used to be 12, didn't it?
Something. I'm pretty sure it's gone down.
Right.
I need to check that out.
And that's, partly due to children are bigger.
Yeah.
Which can affect hormones, and I think partly due to our diets as well, the highly processed food that's
lifestyle and diet,
in children's diet, sadly.
That helps with endometriosis, right, as well, to a degree. Obviously, it's not a cure by any means, and we get a lot of questions in the nutrition clinic all the time. How do I eat for X? It doesn't work like that, but obviously overall lifestyle can help alleviate some pressure.
Definitely, and I think, that's in lifestyle medicine, that's what we talk about. You're altering your lifestyle alongside, whether it's medical treatment, surgical treatment, it can always make a difference. I mean, something, for example, if you do require surgery because you have endometriosis, if you are physically fit because you've been exercising, you'll recover from your surgery better.
True.
Your scars will heal better. You know, it all makes a difference. Same with nutrition, you know, having good sources of protein in your diet will help with recovery. So lifestyles, there's always a role to play for lifestyle.
Absolutely.
I think in any health condition.
100%. And I'm also imagining, so one thing that we're doing recently is when you go into schools and give talks, you know, about basic nutrition, which I'm really enjoying. But one aspect of that is that, and I know you mentioned in the book, you go through the changes. So girls getting crushes, you know, parents breaking up with a friend or a boyfriend, getting boobs for the first time, body odour. You touch on all of that, but let's talk about the fact that we need to also speak about lifestyle to youngsters, because that's a tool for their toolbox, right?
100%. There's a couple of things in there that in the book that might seem a bit wacky, but I talk about osteoporosis.
Yeah. Well, so you should, because
it's so relevant for girls of this age to know about osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is so incredibly common in women postmenopausally.
1 in 2 over 50. I know that because we
1
had
in
a stat
2
on that
over
recently.
50. There we go.
That's
but in order,
crazy.
one of the most important things you can do to prevent your risk of osteoporosis, it starts when you're pre-puberty, because laying down that bone mass, bone density whilst you're still growing, once you finish growing, you only have a certain amount of capacity as to how much you can strengthen your bones.
Yeah.
It all happens whilst you're a child, whilst you're growing up. So, you know, having good sources of calcium and vitamin D, and, you know, we see this trend towards plant milks, which is fine, but
If
actually for children, if they're fortified, but for children, some children may think it's healthier to have a plant
These
milk.
health halo
but actually,
foods.
So, you know, understanding that having good sources of calcium and putting pressure through your bones every day, even if that is jumping up and down on the spot 20 times a day, putting that shock through your bones is what tells your bones to lay down more minerals and get stronger. And, you know, it's important. Imagine if everyone knew that at the age of 10, and if half of girls therefore
diets and as a teenager, which is what we see in the clinic, that we see the era of women that come to us with osteopenia, or they're on the verge, or they're worried because of menopausal changes or whatever, but the damage has been done.
Well, there was once a spokesperson for, I think it was for the Osteoporosis Society, and he said it's quite extreme, but, you know, it's what gets the message out there. But he said that we're potentially going to have a generation of children whose parents will care for them because their bones will be so brittle. So parents will be pushing around their children in wheelchairs and I think that's extreme, and let's not be, it's alarmist and it's extreme and it's probably not true.
It is, but it might be a wake-up call for someone listening, or for me, certainly it makes me, you know, we make the links back to childhood obesity, we make the links back to the health of a nation on a whole, and how we should be looking out for one another and spreading these messages, right? Because that's essentially what we need to do, and equally spreading the message about fertility. So we did touch on it before you even had Lisbon, which I love that you're now here and we're talking about it again. You knew you wanted to be a mother for so long. You froze your eggs as well when you were 38. Talk to me about the journey around that time. And
so what happened?
Not too much detail, but give me a bit of detail.
Well, I was asked to do to present a short film for the One Show.
Nice.
About egg freezing, and I'd never worked for them before. They rang me up and said, would you do it? And I said, oh, how did you know I was thinking about freezing my eggs? They said, we didn't, but would you be willing to share? So then they were very excited. So I spent the whole day learning about egg freezing, learning different opinions. Some people were for, some were against, met someone who'd done it, went to a clinic, saw how it's done. And at the end of that day, it was like, for me, I definitely need to do this. I'm 38, I'm single. I know I want to be a mum. For me, I can't imagine the second half of my life not being a mother. So whilst I completely respect people who feel differently, for me it was something I really wanted. So it was a no-brainer, and I'd been able to weigh it all up. But I thought, gosh, imagine if I'm a doctor and I've got loads of mates and we talk about everything, and I feel like I'm sort of
in the know.
I'm in the know, I work in the media, yet it took for me to spend a whole day making this film to know that that was the right thing for me to do. What chance does everybody else have out there? So that's why, you know, coming on and talking to you about fertility, and I think people just need to be more aware. Egg freezing isn't for everybody. It's, you know, for me, I've got 7 eggs on ice, which if I come to use them, there's more chances I won't get a baby than I will get a baby. It's, you know, it's not perfect. But for me, it was, I went on to meet Stuart and we had Lisbon and we conceived naturally and all that's great. But for me, I didn't ever want to be in a position where I'd look back and think there was something I could have done.
Yeah,
and I didn't do it.
Because you've ruled out the element of the what if I had.
Yeah.
Side.
So I decided to do it, and there's quite a lot. So anyone who's done IVF or egg freezing will know all the injections that you give twice a day. I was dating somebody at the time as well, so it's kind of would be at dinner. I'm like, I've just got to go and do my injection, and then you can't exercise towards the end too much, only gentle exercise because your ovary is very large. You've got to keep going in for scans. And
I didn't know that because your ovaries get larger, and of course, you get all the eggs. So you're off. So it felt like towards the end, it felt like having 2 cricket balls in my pelvis. It was sort of even moving around was a little bit uncomfortable. Was it like a kind of subtle cramping, or just
not really? I didn't. Maybe other people might experience that, but I could just feel like my ovaries. It felt like I just had 2 rocks in my pelvis, so moving around was a little bit uncomfortable. And what I'd done, I'd been quite clever about it because, I thought I'd been clever because I knew my hormones were going to be all over the place. And going to the fertility clinic and seeing lots of couples and me being on my own, I thought that might make me quite sad, but it didn't really, because I thought, as far as I'm aware, I can get pregnant, and these couples actually are struggling. So
that's another element I hadn't considered. Of course, even going to the clinic in itself is a humongous daunting experience.
Yeah, so I thought I might just feel sad that I'm doing this on my own, but I think because I'd sort of prepared and planned, and I had sort of dates booked in with friends every other day, it was fine. But the bit I hadn't prepared for was afterwards. So when they do the egg retrieval, I hadn't prepared for that bit, because you still can't really exercise that well. Your hormones are then plummeting really quickly. And it takes a while for your body to get back to normal. So that was when I had a bit of a wobble, I think, emotionally. But yeah, I found I think being a scientist as well, being a doctor,
of course,
and
you could look at it,
not being a fertility expert.
I
found it all really interesting. I found the process quite interesting. So it was a good experience. I'm really glad I did it. And I think off the back of it, I've had lots of conversations with friends, but also through my network, just saying to women, look, if you're somebody who thinks you really, really do want to be a mother,
give it a
and
go.
You're single, at least just go and do the initial test, see where you're at, see where your fertility is at, because I've heard from fertility nurses when they've had girls in their 20s or very early 30s, and actually, just their AMH level, which indicates your fertility reserve, has been very, very low. So
because it can run in families, can't it? Sometimes fertility. One of my best friends has a donor baby, and she did it via a donor, and that's incredible. And she just knew, like you, she'd done a lot of research. She's not a scientist, but I think if we're discussing options for everybody, it's just really important to be clued up. Yeah,
and it is expensive. It's an investment.
Yeah.
So it's not it's not achievable for everybody, but I think knowledge is always power.
Yeah.
So if you go and get those tests done, your fertility test done, and you're 30, and they say, look, you typical for a 30-year-old, you think, fine, I'll just crack on for another 5 years and see what happens. But if your AMH is low, and they end up saying, your fertility may not last as long as it does on average, then it might change.
I've had that happen to a friend as well. In a year, there was quite a difference that she wasn't expecting in a year. Yeah. So it's just important to stay on top of it. And I guess it moves me forward to thinking about the other pressure for women, of course, that have had babies that we touched on at the start. And that is the bounce back ideal. And it's very, very... the language we use around it is important to execute in the right way. So I'm going to start off by that way, and let anyone that follows me on social media will know I'm in a slim body.
Yeah.
It does not mean I bounced back. People don't know my physical recovery, the side effects from birth, the mental health. I mean, I'm very open about the fact I have PTSD and PMD second time round. But I don't think people realise that you cannot judge a book by its cover.
No.
And this expectation on women.
It's ridiculous. Well, here's some language for you. Bounce back is bullshit. It's absolute bullshit.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Because your body, the truth is, your body doesn't bounce back. And yes, you will see some people. I had my baby at a similar time to, I can't even say her name now, the the model. Is it
Emily Ratajkowski?
Emily Ratajkowski.
I know who you mean. Yes.
She had her baby, and
but she's a model.
A few weeks later, she,
like that.
But on the inside, her body had not bounced back.
No.
Her hormones would have still not been normal. So the relaxing hormone that people often are aware of,
your
that takes
can
months.
Change, things change, pelvic floor.
Your soft tissues inside your body have been stretched. It takes at least a year for them to actually come back. So you have to be careful if you're a runner or if you're lifting heavy weights.
I can't do the well, I can now, just the trampoline part with the kids.
Okay.
But it took a long time and a lot of pelvic floor work.
Yes, and your brain actually structurally changes permanently when you have a baby. There's a really nice saying this came from a doula who, I think she's one of the people who set up a company called the Postnatal Plan.
Okay.
And she says that when a baby is born, a mother is born too.
I love that.
A new human being. Yeah. You're a different person.
Yeah.
Inside and out. Your body will never be the same completely. My pelvis is is a different shape to what it was after the first one.
I know you've spoken about your back pain
issues. But even somebody like, I still can't say her name. Help me.
Emily Ratajkowski. I hope I've got it right. What if I've got it wrong?
Do they call it MRAT for short?
Yeah, her Instagram name, I know because she worked with a brand I've worked with recently. I think it's MRAT, something like that.
So even somebody who appears to look the same way.
They're not really.
They're not. They're not the same way. It's impossible. And if you're breastfeeding, then, even after you've finished breastfeeding, your hormones are still not back.
So I stopped 2 months ago and I still have milk.
Oh, do you?
Like, how long does it take to go? Can I ask you as a doctor, how long does it take?
Well, much milk. Is it just a little bit of milk?
Yeah, I can just hand express a little bit of milk.
Yeah, I don't know. The answer to I guess it's different for everybody, but there you go.
See?
2 months later, and your body's still able, so you've still got that prolactin.
I'm nearly 17 months postpartum, my second now, which goes to show I've still got those hormones surging.
But, you hear about all sorts of things, how, the psychology is a big part. Did you really want to give up breastfeeding, or were you a bit reluctant?
It was almost, so this time around, I'm really glad you've actually raised it because it might be helpful to people. In COVID with Zaki, my first, it was lockdown and I had the opportunity, a lot of struggles, don't get me wrong, the tongue ties, the milk blebs, all of it, but I managed to do 22 months. And I told myself, I put this pressure on myself, if I don't do the same for my second, I'm not a good mum because I couldn't give him the same. But I could, out of lockdown, which which
you absolutely know is nonsense.
It's nonsense. So I can't be fed with my second. And I think it meant our journey did end maybe a bit sooner than it would have if I hadn't combi fed. But if I hadn't have used formula and breast, I would not mentally be a same person right now, or have been able to work or do anything I needed to be a good mother. Yeah.
And
so I do feel a bit sad
that's what your child needs more than anything. I always say, when people ask me what are my views on the breastfeeding bottle feed, I just say, look, we're so lucky that we have an incredible replacement for breast milk, but there's no replacement for a mother's mental health.
No, and I have to say, when you are in the depths of, I had postpartum psychosis with my first.
Wow.
I had the PTSD. If you are not quite there, I'm sure, I was very lucky to have help and access. So many women don't.
Yeah.
But that is way more important, being able to be a stable support for your child.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, so if you want to breastfeed and you can.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'd really encourage people to do
also,
it. But if you don't want to,
we should say, because so many people think breastfeeding is the answer to weight loss. It's not. I know they say it burns 300 to 500 calories.
But your body's very, very clever at making you eat an extra 300 to 400 calories because you're
hungry.
You're hungry if you're breastfeeding.
Up all night.
So there should be no judgment. As long as the baby's fed, then your mental health as a mother is whatever makes you happier.
Absolutely.
Go for it.
I'm so thank you for asking that back at me, because I feel like it's a question I don't talk about enough, but equally it probably will help some listeners hopefully. And we've touched on Bounceback. Let's get there to menopause. Average age is 51, but you've said, I know like Lisa Snowdon talks about hers coming earlier. For some people, it can definitely hit you and hit people with a shock, I think. People just aren't ready, are they, or aware? So I guess, just how does it change? I mean, for women of colour, who on average apparently go through menopause at least 2 years earlier?
Yes.
How is that? I didn't even know that before researching.
I didn't know either. Hands up. as a doctor, I don't think most people do know. So yes, so the average age of menopause in both the UK and the US is 51. But there's been this massive study done in America called the SWAN study, where they followed hundreds of thousands of women. And what they found is that for black women, on average, that menopause is 2 years earlier. Not only that, but perimenopause is longer and black women have more severe symptoms. So black women have menopause earlier, longer, and with more severe symptoms.
Well, that's not fair, is it?
Yet they're only half as likely to be given HRT.
How? How is this even a thing?
Really interesting. And then they didn't look at South Asian women in their study, but other studies, similar studies, say that for South Asian women, on average, 5 to 7 years earlier. And the types of symptoms are different as well. So in the SWAN study, they found that Hispanic women were more likely to have vaginal symptoms, black women more likely to have vasomotor symptoms, so the hot sweats and night flushes.
I'm going to be looking up the SWAN study.
Hot flushes and night sweats.
How on earth does it take the SWAN study to be done? What drives me insane is that they've been using this white kind of data that's so inaccurate and outdated, letting so many women down. Yeah.
So, and then the fact that black women actually, whilst probably need HRT more, are less likely to access it. So they've looked into all of this. They've said the access issue, partly it may be that women of colour are less likely to attend and seek support from a healthcare professional because there may be trust issues. But they also, when they've looked at other studies, they found that even with the same woman with the same presentation, skin colour affects the way a clinician will prescribe.
Doesn't it make you want to knock on the door at 10 Downing Street and just go like, hello?
Yeah, I know.
Hi.
I know.
We're all out here, women of all colours, just wanting equality for women.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, please.
Yes, we're right here. It would, wouldn't it? Nice. I tell myself that all the time. I just don't. Hearing those stats.
Yeah. So I was shocked. You know, it made me think. I've always thought about, the best guess you can make for when you'll hit menopause is based on the age your mum was, right? So if I take the age my mum was white woman, my dad's black Jamaican, so I'm probably about a year out as a mixed race woman. I probably need to take a year off because if it's 2 years,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so interesting, and I think it's really important that healthcare professionals know this. But they don't have the
data on mixed race either, do they?
They don't have the data on mixed race women either. So
which is one that needs to happen.
There's so much more data we need to study women. We're getting to a point now where I think governments recognise, establishments that do research recognise that it's not appropriate to think of women as small men, and it's not appropriate to extrapolate.
BMI was based on men.
Yeah. And it's not appropriate to extrapolate data that's done in a white population to a black population, for example. So we need to start doing all these studies. We need to do studies in women, just in women. We need to do studies where we look at the differences between different races. And it means that hopefully at some point in the future, you may not be prescribed the same drug as me because it will work differently. And we may not be prescribed the same treatment altogether as men. So women are not small men. We are not women.
Small men. And I feel like we've come to this point in time. I don't know if it's just because we are in this position that we're in now discussing these topics, or that genuinely the world is at a shift. I feel like the world is on a hinge with a lot of aspects, from global warming to the realisation that we are not equal, not fair. Yeah. We're looking at food poverty, we're looking at obesity, we're looking at undernourishment, malnourishment. Mm-hmm. We're at a cusp where a lot of decisions that are being made is going to have a humongous knock-on effect. Yeah.
And we've designed all of this into our lives. That's the thing. 100 years ago or 50 years ago, a few decades ago, we didn't have a lot of these health issues. And it's because we've designed physical activity out of our lives. We've designed, food that is hyper delicious and hypercalorific, but has no nutrition. Yeah. We've designed all this stuff that's making us ill. And how are we going to redesign it? How are we going to undesign it? How are we going to go back? It's hard. This
question blows my mind with every podcast episode I feel I do on Food for Thought, because you know, when I speak to someone about these individual issues, it becomes almost so overwhelming. You don't know how to process the information that you're absorbing, yet you want to do something so badly about it.
Yeah.
And it does feel like you're knocking on a brick wall sometimes.
And even that, you know, the processing of information, you know, we designed computers that were meant to make our lives easier.
And now we're like hooked on dependent.
You know, midnight, I'm still on my phone at midnight.
I use that time. Everyone actually, ironically, our episode last week was on sleep. And I know perfectly well that I shouldn't be on there. But as a mum, I've put my kids to bed. The only time I get to catch up is when they're in bed. But I could talk about that forever. But we are also going to be speaking to Vicky Patterson on her, because she talks all about PMDD.
Yes.
Can you touch on premenstrual You say it for me, please.
Premenstrual dysphoric disorder. I can say that one.
You got it.
I can't say names, but I can say names of conditions.
Yes.
Dysphoric disorder. So PMDD is, well, what is it? So 1 in 3 women experience PMS, premenstrual syndrome. It usually comes before the period. And at the very extreme end of severity, 1 in 20 women have PMDD. So it is PMS, but it's a very extreme form of that essentially means that women in the week or 2 weeks before their period, they cannot function. They cannot live their life the way they want to. It's a combination of physical symptoms and mental symptoms. So, you know, there's over 50 potential symptoms, but the common ones are mood disturbance, you know, anxiety, irritable, breast tenderness, lack of energy, fatigue. I think one way, there's 2 ways I've heard it described that I think really ring home. One is it's like every month a monster comes and takes over my body for a week. And the other one is it's like I spend 1 to 2 weeks of the month trying to ruin my life, and then the other 2 to 3 weeks trying to put it back together again. Yeah. And Vicky Patterson's been talking about it on her social media and raising awareness. And I think I spoke about it on This Morning, and I got so many comments saying, that's me. I've never heard of it before.
Well, I remember
that is me.
People will probably remember at school, there was always someone that couldn't come in that week, or some, you know, and it might have been PMDD.
It could have been, yeah.
We just didn't
I think
know.
sometimes maybe it was symptoms related to the period. It could have been endometriosis.
Yeah.
Or that comes, and I think the hallmark is people can feel absolutely terrible, horrendous, cannot function, and then their period comes, and within 48 hours, they feel absolutely fine again. Oh my gosh,
the relief, I have to say, afterwards, you feel like a happier, newer person, a new individual afterwards.
Yeah.
I now get, this is not a severe thing, but ovulation pain since having children. Never had it before.
Mittelschmerz pain.
Yeah. That's there you go. I can't say that either.
I think it's Mittelschmerz.
Is that German?
Yeah.
Mittelschmerz.
Sounds it, doesn't
German,
it? Mittelschmerz. Yeah. So yes, you can feel when ovulation's happening.
And I think, is it period? No, look at my diary. No, it must be ovulation.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Well, people with endometriosis can sometimes get that very, very severely.
Yeah.
Because you can imagine what's actually happening is that egg, that follicle is erupting out of the ovary, right? So that's what's taking place. So you can have a response to that. But imagine if you've got scarring in that area, blood in that area, you know, it can be really extreme pain.
Oh, I can't. We've got so many questions, Zoe, on that type of front. And I feel like I want to get them all in from our listeners. I'm going to see which one. So we've mentioned, I'd probably say this one. This is actually quite important, touching on the subject that we had when you said people don't go to their doctor as well, not just because of their ethnicity or background, but in general, when people can't go to a family doctor. She said, how can I get the pill? Holly has asked that question. Okay,
so if they can't get an appointment with their GP or they don't have a GP.
I don't know,
well, there are a number of ways. You could go to a sexual health clinic or a contraception clinic. So if you just go onto the NHS website and search contraception clinic, then you can put in your postcode and it'll tell you how to get in touch with them, whether you email them or give them a ring. So that's how to do it on the NHS. If you are somebody who wants to pay, you'd rather pay and, you know, have the convenience of doing it privately, then most of the main pharmacies now, so I know Lloyd's Pharmacy definitely do it. I think most of the main pharmacies, you can go online and do a consultation with a pharmacist or a doctor online. Yeah. And some pharmacists can prescribe as well, depending on which type of pill. So if you want the progesterone only pill, then sometimes you can now get that over the counter. Wow. But, you know, the benefit of doing it on the NHS is that all contraception is free.
Yeah, and you can have that chat about what one might suit you better.
Exactly.
Yeah. And where the hell are we at with the man pill? Can I just get that question in there? Because I remember being so excited about that like years ago, and then I didn't hear anything.
So I made a documentary, a Horizon documentary, all about contraception a few years ago, and it was really interesting because I got to hear about the background of the male pill. So they have managed to find a male pill on a few occasions that is effective.
Nice.
But because of the side effects, which included things like weight gain, mood disturbance.
I'm sorry, I guess it's so un-PC of me for the podcast, but come on.
It never came to market. So I believe that there is another one in the pipeline at the moment. But here's the thing. When we made that documentary, we also did a survey where we asked women if there was a male pill that was effective.
Would you trust them?
To take it? And the majority of women said no. They'd rather,
True, you do want to be in control.
Yeah.
But at the same time, anyway.
Just put it in their dinner.
Yeah, exactly. Mash it up in a potato.
But I'm sure one day.
Yeah, one day. This is quite a sensitive one, actually, next. And Sonia said, my daughter always dismisses me. She shuts down the conversation when I try to talk to her about puberty. Is there any advice you can give on how to open that discussion?
Yes, right. So, discussions with young people about puberty. As a parent, you may be really lucky in that your young person will come and talk to you about everything and anything, but many young people, the last person they want to talk to is their parent, because they just find it all so uncomfortable and embarrassing. So you could buy them my book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they got Zoe's book, then they're fine.
I've had lots of feedback from parents, actually, quite funny, telling me how their young people have responded. So there was one woman, she said she bought the book for a 10-year-old daughter, and a 10-year-old daughter was like, oh God, that's so embarrassing, like threw it into the corner of her room. But then she noticed that she was reading it because it was sort of moving around her room and reading it every night. And then following that, she started asking her mum questions. So I think giving them a good resource. So Dr. Ranj did a book for boys that's equivalent to my book as well. Give them a resource, gift it to them.
I'll have to check that out for mine in the future.
Yeah, definitely. And then just let them know that the door is always open. They can talk to you about anything. And then if you do want to talk about something specifically and you are going to bring it up, give them a warning shot. Just say, on Saturday, we're going to go shopping to the supermarket, and in the car on the way there, I'd like to talk to you about this.
And how early is too
we're
early?
going to buy you some tampons.
Like what age, if we're talking about this for parents listening, they're thinking...
No, I don't think there's too early. I don't think there's an age that is too early. I think if a young person is asking questions and they're old enough to understand the truthful, honest answer, you're never going to harm someone by telling them the truth. So, if you're a 3-year-old coming and saying, how are babies made? You're probably not going to want to go into the truth about how babies are made. But if you do, if you just say, well, you're not going to do them any harm, because at some point they're going to search for the answers. So as soon as they're curious and they're old enough to understand, just tell them the truth. And then the other tip would be to take the intensity out of the conversation, doing it when you're in a car. Yeah. And especially if they're in the back of the car, they're just more, take the eye contact out of it.
True.
Or whilst you're out for a walk or kicking a ball about.
Great tips. So
that it's not so intense.
I love that, actually. Yeah, having them in the back of the car or taking away, because that's half of the awkward vibe, isn't it? When you're there together.
And if you've let them know beforehand that it's coming as well, they've been able to have a little bit of a think about it.
Yeah, no, that's a really good tip. And finally, I will pick this one from Ida. She said, my discharge has changed colour and it smells different. Is this bad? So,
okay, potentially.
We haven't even discussed discharge, but you as the doctor obviously discuss everything.
I did a little Instagram post on this recently.
Oh, good.
To go back
How
with
did that go down?
Bupa.
I missed that one.
Really good. So it just shows, it's a sanitary pad and it just shows different colours of what's meant to be discharged. But, it's mustard and tomato ketchup, etc.
Yeah.
But if it's a change from your normal, then potentially it is worth checking it out. So white or clear discharge is deemed to be normal. Yeah. If it's lumpy and it's white, it could be thrush. But, especially if it's pink or red and it's not around the time of your period, if it's between periods or after sex, then that should be checked out. It could be an infection. So, and it might not be a sexually transmitted infection. It could be BV. So, if it's changed, colour or significantly change colour, it's not normal for you, just see your GP and get some swabs done.
And if someone wants to ask for a female GP, I remember Dr. Philip Kay saying this, you can't you?
Absolutely. Yeah, if you'd rather see a female GP, or if you'd rather see a nurse
or a male, if you're a male, I think it's okay to ask.
You absolutely can request that, 100%.
Yeah, it's just good to have the tools, guys, because if anyone is asking sensitive questions, it's all very well being anonymous on a podcast, but I'm sure that.
I also think for some things it's worth asking if there's a specialist. So particularly for menopause, there may be a nurse or a doctor that has done additional training who specialises in menopause.
Yeah.
So I think we're entering a world where we're going to be expected as patients to share a little bit more with the person at the end of the phone or over the counter at the GP surgery. And that's not because they're being nosy, they're bound to the same confidentiality rules as the doctors. But it's to get you to the right person if somebody's got a bit more training. But, we're going to see GP teams changing in that there may be paramedics, there may be psychologists, there may be physios. So it may be that actually the GP is not always the right person or the best person for you to see.
But it's so interesting. I'd love it if they actually took registered nutritionists on, because that would be incredible for the NHS, wouldn't it?
That is so needed.
And
there's a very limited access to any nutritional support.
It's only if you have a severe condition or something that requires a dietitian to work with you. It's you're right. We have a whole health history form, and then we know which expert in the clinic to send them to.
And surely it's only a matter of time, right? Because there are so many conditions now where the advice is nutritional advice. And as GPs, we are not, we're not qualified. We don't have...
The title isn't protected still. So until we can get the title protected, which is a whole new petition when the new government comes next year...
But there is a list, isn't there? There's a list of...
There was, but because the new government came in and then COVID came in and then you have to wait for the new Don't get me... I don't even... All I know is that, obviously, I work very closely with AFN and we can't start anything about this until the next government get in because of X, Y, Z that I don't fully understand.
Well, surely that's happening.
Come
on, British people.
Come on.
Come on, British people. Be sensible.
Exactly. Okay, Zoe, are you ready for our fact or fiction round? Oh, she's ready.
Let's do it.
So ready. Okay. All girls will enter puberty at age 12.
Fiction. Usually between the ages of 9 and 15.
Excellent. New mums should rest for a month after giving birth.
At least. Probably 3 months.
That would be amazing, wouldn't it? Fatigue, brain fog, heart palpitations, itchy skin, low mood, headaches, lightheadedness, or an intolerance to heat are all symptoms caused by declining hormones.
Well, they all can be, fact, potentially, and many, many more.
Wow. All new mums easily adjust to motherhood.
Fiction. Here's one that didn't.
Yep. Puberty happens overnight.
Fiction. Can take up to 5 years.
5 years?
Yeah. Wow. Usually for girls it's breast buds first, and then for 5 years.
But we're born with all the eggs, aren't we?
Born with all the eggs. Usually it's breast buds first, then on average periods start about 2 years after that.
Fascinating. Cranberry juice cures UTIs, urinary tract infections.
Fiction.
Thank you.
But drinking cranberry juice can prevent the E. coli being able to climb their way up to the bladder. But the studies show you actually have to drink a lot and there's loads of sugar, so not the best remedy.
The supplements that you can buy for this are not evidence-based either, sadly, at the moment, because there are a few out there. We should avoid making GP appointments as the NHS is too overwhelmed.
Fiction. My issue with this is that there are some people who it's the kind people who don't want to burden their GP, who sit at home with their symptoms, who then end up becoming severely unwell. And, please don't sit at home and just get it checked out sooner rather than later. Always.
300%. Women go through dramatic mental and physical changes as their reproductive systems go through major changes.
Fact, both at puberty and menopause.
Heart disease is the leading cause of death for women.
Fiction. So it's just been overtaken now by dementia.
Oh, no.
So they're sort of, depending which resource you use, but the Office for National Statistics says for women that dementia is the leading cause of death.
Which we will highlight. We have episodes on, our brain and our diet is very, very important. Yes, this is another area. Women can take charge of their health by eating a proper diet, seeking proper screenings and maintaining a healthy lifestyle.
Fact.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Big
Fantastic fact or fiction round. Let's just go there with dementia very quickly. Sorry, I'm just throwing it on you. But I just feel, Like, there's not enough spoken about how to eat to protect our brain as well. And I know it's not all dietary, but what are signs to look out for if anyone's feeling at any age that they should go to their doctor?
I mean, something I learned recently was about, I don't know if this was covered in your sleep episode, but how sleep is so important for preventing dementia, because in the latter stages of sleep, your brain, like your lymphatic system, you have a lymphatic system of your brain, and it washes, and those proteins that cause Alzheimer's dementia are washed out of the brain.
Well, they're the plaques, the amyloid.
The amyloid,
washed away.
Yeah, so the beta amyloid and the tau protein, they get washed away.
Yeah.
So lifestyle, dementia, like all chronic diseases, there's a genetic component, there's a lifestyle component, there's an environmental component that you can't change, but then there's an environmental component that you can.
What about hormones? Sorry to interject, because obviously you said for women, does it not impact men in the same way?
So there are a certain number of conditions that are much more common in women than men. I think the thing here is that heart disease is still the biggest killer of men, because it's more one of the risk factors for a heart attack is being a man. And I don't know where dementia is in that list. I don't know if it's second or not, because I didn't research that.
No, don't worry. Sorry, I threw her on the spot for this.
But dementia is more common in women than it is in men, and hormones definitely play a role. You know, as we start to, once we hit menopause and we lose our estrogen and progesterone, then the risk of dementia goes up significantly.
Okay.
So
right. Wow. That does nearly wrap up today's episode.
It's a bit grim, isn't it?
We're going to end it on a high. I promise.
Good.
We always finish with the food for thought. I think I'll start by just saying thank you, first of all. We've touched on so many topics, and I know it's impossible to go into depth like we didn't touch on PCOS, or there's so many other areas. But there is help out there. Mm-hmm. It's just going to the right people, and I cannot emphasize enough. If you are looking for help with a medical condition, seek a doctor.
Yes.
Especially a GP or someone that can point you in the right direction. Just as if you're looking for nutritional advice, go to a registered nutritionist or dietitian, because, as we know, you mentioned earlier, the youth today, or the searching point, are social media platforms like TikTok. That is not the way, sadly. But if you can find the right people on there that can point you in the right direction. Zoe, what would be your take-home message today? I
think just off the back of that is that, you know, our bodies, they're ours. We own them. They're our responsibility. We have to look after them. You know, it's really important. You're the one who decides to attend your cervical screening or your mammogram, or, you know, do your stool sample when you reach the age to do bowel cancer checks, you know, things like screenings. But also, you have to be willing to advocate for yourself. We have a health system that is overburdened. We know that GP appointment rates have gone up whilst GPs have gone down. GPs are stressed. But if you are worried about something, you must persist until you get an answer that you're happy with. You can always ask for a second opinion. If you see a doctor and you don't feel that they took you seriously, particularly if it's something related to women's health, you can ask to see a female doctor or somebody else, and keep going. Keep going until you get the answers that you need. Amazing advice. Yeah, be very, very, very persistent. Zoe, as always, such a pleasure. Where can everyone go to learn more about you, your amazing book, everything? So at Dr. Zoe Williams on Instagram. Trying to do a bit of TikTok, dabbling, but Instagram's the main one.
Dip my feet in. And your book, let everyone know, book, please do. So the book is called You Grow Girl, and, you know, you can get it on Amazon or all the usual places. And yes, and my podcast that I mentioned is called The Doctor Will Hear You Now. Which I love. Thank you for coming on Food for Thought. Thank you so much.